The Rebel of Fox Hill by Marie Woodward. Chapter 2. "Sleeping on the job again, Green?" Corporal Anderson asked as he approached his picket post. Green was slumped against the tree, his rifle in his arms, eyes closed tight. His mouth was slightly open. An unbecoming droplet of drool threatened to fall from it. Anderson kicked Green's boot, and he stirred. Green blinked up at Anderson. "What you got in there?" He sniffed at the air. Smells awfully good." "Provisions." Anderson tossed down the basket of fried chicken to Green. "Don't think I'm bringing any more back for you if I catch you asleep again. Or sentry, Green. This isn't the time to rest. I could get you hung for what I just saw." "Then why don't you?" Green replied with a sly grin. Anderson frowned at him. "You know why." He slipped down next to Green and leaned his back against the tree. He held his rifle in his lap as Green hungrily pawed through the basket and drew out a fried chicken wing. "You could be rid of me," Green said, pointing the wing at him. "You could take that rifle and—" Green made a shooting noise, making Anderson cringe. "You could be done with it, just like that." "You make it sound too easy, Green. What would I do with your body? How would I explain your absence?" Green took a bite of chicken. "Easy. Just dump me in the marsh or the ocean and say the foxes got me." Anderson raised an eyebrow. "Foxes?" He gave a short, sardonic laugh. "Man-eating foxes, huh?" Green wiped his mouth with his sleeve and nodded. "Nice and easy. Tempting, isn't it?" Anderson tightened his grip on his rifle. It was slightly tempting, but there was no way it would work. No way Anderson would even consider it. Not tempting enough. Green laughed. "Thought so." He smacked his lips and grabbed another piece of chicken. "Sure tasty. You can bring me more victuals tomorrow." "I'm not stepping foot into that house again." "Why not?" "They're all a bunch of grayback-loving setches. But their cooking sure is good, Andy," Green said between bites of chicken. "I don't care if they're setches. You take my hardtack, I'll take their cooking." "For the last time, it's Anderson, not Andy," Anderson growled. He paused for a moment, then gave a laugh that sounded more like a grunt. "Anyway, it's that girl you have to be careful of. Her tongue is something else. I don't care how good the cooking is." There was a faint glow in the windows where candlelight poured out into the dark woods. Two shadowy figures moved about downstairs, the girl and her mother, Anderson assumed. He stared for a moment, wondering what they were up to. The scene reminded him of his home back in Vermont. He missed those drowsy evenings when he'd walk home from the fields with his father. He'd watch his sisters going back and forth in front of the windows as they finished their in-chores for the day. What he would give to be back home with them. The farmhouse door swung open, and a petite figure walked out carrying a pail before disappearing into the barn. Eventually, she returned to the house, teetering from the seemingly new weight of the pail. "She's a pretty one, isn't she?" Green said. "I would put up with her tongue if I could look at her all day." Anderson grunted. "You didn't hear her tonight, but I suppose you're right. She's pretty. Maybe if we weren't from the north or she wasn't from the south, things would be different." "What's that got to do with anything?" Green replied. "North and south don't matter to me much." "Yes, but she hates us, Green, because we're northerners. So while you don't care much, she has her standards. She's made that clear." Green smiled, revealing yellow teeth. "Well, we'll see, won't we?" "What exactly will we see, Green?" Anderson asked him, his eyebrows raised. "We'll see if a Setch's girl would go with a Yankee like me, that's what." "No, you stay away from her, Green. She doesn't need any trouble from the likes of you." "Speak for yourself," said Green as he leaped to his feet. "You lay as much as one finger on her and you'll be sorry." "What's it to you what I do? You told me she's got a tongue." "Yes, but I know how you treat women. It's not right. You treat them like mud on the bottom of your shoe. And she's Setch's. What's the difference?" In one swift movement, Anderson grabbed Green's coat collar and shoved him into the tree. "I don't care if she's Setch's or not. She's a woman, and you respect her as if she were your own sister." "Lay off of me," Green said as he tried to jerk away. "I don't got no sisters." "And what's this?" Anderson asked, seeing the cross that Private Green had hidden in his coat. Anderson grabbed the cross and let up on Green's coat. Green spat at him. "You don't touch me again unless you want to fight." "And if you don't touch her, I won't touch you, you hear me?" Anderson spat back. "And no more stealing." Green scowled at him and shouldered his rifle. Without another word, he wheeled around and started toward the barn with heavy, angry steps. Anderson's eyes followed Green, making sure he went straight there, then turned his attention to the woods, watching the tall shadows of the pines as the bright moon shone above him. As he stared into the woods, every now and then turning to see the darkened farmhouse, he couldn't help but think about that girl. She was about his age, 24, maybe a little younger. Tongue or not, she toiled away every day for her mother, and that was admirable. She'd make a good wife for some lucky rebel. Too bad she wasn't a Yankee, then maybe she'd be interested in him. Anderson scolded himself. Why was he interested in the rebel girl anyway? She was a stranger who hated him for the color of his coat. The war would be over soon, then he'd go back to Vermont and never see her again. He'd forget about her, and their lives would go on in their own separate spheres, north and south, like it would always be. Their allegiance was blood deep, and nothing could change that. The crisp morning drizzle was a disappointment to Hannah, who had gotten used to the warmer turn of weather. She bundled up and went out to feed the chickens, wondering if those soldiers were gone from the barn yet. She had seen them at their post the night before when she went to milk the cow, and her mother had left a lantern out for them in the barn. Someone was there later in the night, sleeping in the hay. But Hannah didn't want to run into them. She wanted to keep her distance from the soldiers, especially Private Green. Hannah opened the chicken coop, and the hens streamed out into the misty daylight. "What would you do if Mother Hen let a fox live in your pen?" Hannah asked as she scattered feet upon the ground. "Would you welcome someone who is set to devour you, or would you run away frightened?" A hen who received a large raindrop to the head scurried away from her. "Yes, that's how I feel too," Hannah murmured, "except there's nowhere to run away. I'm stuck, just as you are." "Now you know how I feel," said a voice from behind her. Hannah whirled around to find Corporal Anderson standing there. "Oh, you scared me," Hannah cried, nearly dropping her bucket of feed. "I didn't mean to frighten you again," Anderson replied. "Perhaps I should wear bells to announce my appearance." Hannah refused to meet Anderson's hardened gaze as she scattered more grain to her hens. "What is it I can do for you, sir?" "Nothing. I came to give you something." Anderson reached into his coat and brought out the cross Green had stolen. "I think this belongs to you." Hannah dropped the grain bucket. "Father's cross," she whispered. She met Anderson's eyes as she took the cross and held it close to her chest. "Thank you. Why'd you bring it back?" Anderson scratched his head. "It doesn't belong to me, and it doesn't belong to Green. It's a bit ironic to steal a cross, isn't it? I figured I'd get more blessings bringing it back to its owner." Hannah stroked the smooth grain of the cross. It wasn't much, just a little handheld thing, but she was so happy to have it back. "My father made this. I didn't think I'd see it again." Anderson's face softened. "He was a religious man, I take it?" Hannah nodded. "Yes, very. He was a devout Methodist all his life. Never missed going to church, not even once. There was one time," she broke into a big smile. "One time he was really sick and couldn't get out of bed. Mother said God would understand if he didn't make it to church, but he wouldn't listen. He made us take him anyway. He lay in the wagon outside church and listened to the Reverend speak." Remembering she was talking to a Yankee, Hannah's smile disappeared and her voice grew cold. "I'm sorry. I don't know why I'm bothering to tell you these things. I'm sure you have much better things to do than to listen to me ramble on." Anderson leaned against the wall of the chicken coop. "Not at all. I have a little time to spare, so please go on. Your father reminds me of my own. We are Methodists as well." "Really?" "Of course. You don't think religion is a Southern invention, do you?" "No, of course not," Hannah said. "I guess I didn't know what Northerners believed. Private Green obviously never had any churching." Anderson grinned. "Don't judge all of us based on the sins of Private Green. He's just a poor city boy from New York. No education. Stealing was his way of life growing up. He doesn't know any better. It's my goal to teach him some manners by the end of this war. Give him some civilization." Anderson's gaze trailed off into the woods. Hannah followed his gaze to see Private Green at his post, glaring back. "Good luck," she said with a half frown. She held up the cross to Green, who gave her an angry scowl and tucked it into a pocket of her dress. "I won't make the same mistake keeping this in hand's reach." She patted her pocket, then picked up her bucket of feed to the chagrin of the hens feasting from it. "Now, if you could please excuse me, I'm very busy. I have more animals to feed and many other chores to do." "Could I help?" Anderson asked as Hannah walked away. The question made her turn on her heel to face him. "You want to help me?" "Well, I've got nothing better to do," Anderson replied. "Now don't be silly," Hannah said with a wave of her hand. "I don't need help." Anderson smiled. "That's what you said yesterday." Hannah pursed her lips. "You're a soldier. What do you know of farm work?" "I wasn't born a soldier, and if I can help it, I won't die one either," Anderson said. "I've done my fair share of farm work." "Oh yeah? Then what do you do with an egg-bound hen?" "Eat her." Hannah tried to suppress a chuckle. "Well, that certainly would be the easiest solution." Anderson reached for the feed bucket. His fingers brushed hers, sending a shiver up her spine. "Here, let me take care of this, and you can go take care of whatever else you need to do." "Fine," Anna said, relinquishing her hold on the bucket. "But shouldn't you be standing guard instead of over here with me?" "Not right now. It's Green's turn. We switch off." Besides, I'll take any excuse to get a break from him." Hannah gave Anderson a sly grin. "I thought you said you were going to give him some civilization." "Yes, but helping you would produce more immediate results than civilizing him when he's on duty." "More immediate results, huh?" Hannah said. "What kind of results are you hoping for?" She didn't understand what he meant, but felt strangely flattered. Anderson's cheeks turned a bright shade of crimson. "Shouldn't you be getting back to your chores?" he huffed. "I suppose I do." Hannah took a few steps away, then swiveled around to address him. "Thank you for your help." She gave him a little grin and continued on her way. Why was he being so kind after how she treated him last night? It didn't seem right. She had expected him to be cold and distant. Hannah was supposed to be his enemy. Her best friend Abigail had written her about the Yankees, how mean and evil they were, how they stole and pillaged Southern homes. Not to forget, it was a Yankee who had killed Abigail's brother Thomas. But Anderson had done none of these things. He wasn't the bully Abigail had made men like him out to be, and as far as she was concerned, he wasn't the one who had killed Thomas. If that Northerner wanted to spend his free time helping her, she would let him. There wasn't any harm in it, after all.
You've been listening to The Rebel of Fox Hill by Marie Woodward. Please click the like and subscribe button to hear more of my audiobook. Your support means a lot to me. Thank you for listening.